just be as you need to be in the space. There are bathrooms, and they're located behind that curtain on my left or your right. They are accessible. There's a low sensory space on the opposite side behind this curtain over here on your left, my right, I think. Yep. And it's not devoid of all noise, but there are earplugs in there. This event is in 2 parts. We've got this lovely panel here with us today, and then we'll do a workshop. So we'll have a break at around 3 o'clock for about 10 minutes to chill out and have a snack. What else? Oh, it's being live streamed, and it will be available on YouTube at some point in the future. So a bit about today's event. This is the final in a series of events celebrating AAV's 50th anniversary. And the previous events have been really focused on the past and present work of Arts Access. And this event today is inviting everyone to dream of what the future holds for AAV, but also for the arts sector more generally. We've had a youth advisory committee at Arts Access Victoria for the last 3 years. Yeah, I'm going to say 3. And they've been helping us build our youth program. They've also been working on a manifesto over that time, and that's what we're really going to be talking about today. It's not launched yet, but it is coming soon. So now I will introduce my wonderful panel.
much of a core of who I am, because it affects all my life. So yeah, it was really like heartwarming and really nice.
Thanks, Ash.
Yeah, I mean, super similar to what everyone has said. A lot about connection and like really reducing that pressure of what it means to be an artist and what it means to be a disabled artist, and like the idea that you can have that as a term and a label but not always have to be exploring your disability or not be the disability token in places and things like that. And I think also, I don't actually know, it was probably Caroline. Caroline is, as we have, and I think also, I don't actually know, it was probably Caroline. Caroline is, as we have said, amazing. And I think she was the one that said something like, you know, you want to like be the person that is replaced, as in like you want to create a space that's so amazing and so accessible and stuff that like whoever replaces you is going to have like a massive like jump from where you started and things like that. And I just think about that as our group, what we started with and then what we're leaving with and like what could come next. I think that really came out throughout the group.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. Another of the key points in the manifesto was around changing the narrative, the mainstream narrative. Can you share what this means to you? Raquel, would you mind going first?
Yeah, certainly. I think from a broader perspective, shifting the narrative at the heart of that would be to create a wider perspective of disability that's viewed through the social model of disability, where disability or deafness isn't seen as a fault of an individual's body, but rather a failure on the part of the environment to provide access to them. I recently was struck by the realization that every single person on this planet has access needs, not just people who are disabled. So abled people, disabled people, those who identify somewhere in between. It just so happens that the majority of the world provides access needs to abled people more often than they do disabled people. And I think if there was a global shift in realizing that, then that would create phenomenal changes in terms of how the world at large interacts with those with disabilities.
Amazing, thank you. Michael.
Are we all good? I think I definitely I agree with what Raquel said about changing what it means to be presenting as a disabled person in the community. I think as well, I want, just on a personal level, I would like the narrative to be less about how awful it is to be disabled, because it isn't all the time. And there are definitely challenges, but they're not as fault of ourselves, as Raquel said. Yeah, I definitely think shifting the narrative to more of a how can we portray ourselves and how can we provide access in a way that is more of a positive light, is what I mean. I think a lot of the time when creating in the basis or in the creating in regards to disability, I often find myself thinking about it in a negative way, which isn't what I would like it to be. I would like to be able to create art about disability that is not just focused on the parts that are hard, but also the parts that are good, like community and the way that we have a unique way of experiencing the world, and that's not a bad thing. And I think that the narrative should reflect that.
Thanks, Michael. Ash.
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, same as what everyone said, but also maybe shifting how do I word it? Kind of the idea of a successful artist and what that means. And often, you know, that is shaped by whether you make money and whether you make a lot of money and how popular you are. And that, like, idea itself is very ableist and, like, is about being able to spend all your time creating work and, like, getting out there and being in the right networks and in the right spaces, whatever that means. And for a lot of disabled folks, like, we are doing art on our own time and in our own places, in our own spaces, and that is equally as successful as someone who is exhibiting in all these fancy, nice exhibitions in who knows where. I think that, like, making art for your community or for yourself, or, like, being able to, like, live your life through art is a success, and we should be looking at how that, how we can nurture that, I guess, in communities.
Thanks, Ash. Natalie?
Yeah, totally echoing that as well. Agree with what everyone said. I think particularly on that, like, there is that narrative that to be a successful artist, you have to produce an outcome. There has to be a final project. And that's the same for, like, when you're going for grants or you're going for opportunities. It's like, okay, take up this wonderful opportunity, but at the end we want to see you create something and we have to have access to it. We need to market it and we need to sell it. And there's so, like, not any representation on here's the process of creating this thing, here's how I brought these people together, here's the discussions I had with different members of the community, or even just on your own if you're just thinking about ideas. There's a lot less value placed on the process of creating and more focused on where is the thing that I can touch and grab and see. So I think changing that narrative to be like, there are all different parts of creating art and they all have value, but for disabled artists in particular, you might not see as much outcome because of different reasons, but that still has value and that's important.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, the next question builds on what you've been saying, and it's a theme in the manifesto about being your authentic selves as artists and art workers. Why do you think that's important for the future? Michael, I'll start with you.
I think it's important for the future, almost on a personal level, just because it makes you a better creative, I think. I think when we try to shield parts of ourselves and try to hide parts of ourselves, that we end up making worse art, because if we're not true to where that art is coming from, then it's the art itself isn't going to be true, and I hope that makes sense. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important also because we can educate other people. Not to say that being disabled means that you automatically have to be an educator, because that's something also that I have thought, Jesus, why is that responsibility placed on people that didn't ask for it? But also in a way that is respectful to yourself. You can share your experiences with other people, and I think that makes the world richer, because if I think that we can provide just a way to that other people can look at our experiences, then that means that they can build a greater worldview. And in the same way, we can look at other people's experiences and apply that to our own art. I think the way that art is constructed, really, if it's more collaborative, it will only become better. We can only make our own art more expressive and broad, I guess. So I think being true to yourself in your disability or in your life experiences is really important for that. Yeah.
Thanks. Ash, why do you think it's important?
Yeah, I think on a similar vein, and yeah, similar vein as well to what Natalie was saying before, there's so much like processing I do in art, and I know that every time I get stuck in a loop of just, you know, not having time to create something or feeling like it's not a priority, I just feel worse, and like I feel like something's not quite right in some way. And I know that that's reflected in a lot of people, whether they identify themselves as artists or not. It's just that like creative processing of a world that's often very hectic and very like structured in a way that we didn't choose. And so creativity gives us a chance to kind of escape that in some way, or process it or contain it onto a piece of A4 paper or whatever you're choosing to contain it to. And I think that when you're being creative, you get to be your authentic self because it kind of implies that anyway. Like, it's hard to be creative unauthentically or inauthentically. And I think for a lot of, disabled artists, we spend so much time trying to mask or be part of an abled world, or like look like a non-disabled person in whatever way that is, that being creative gives us a chance on a almost meta level to deconstruct that and work through it and process it and things like that. So I think like living our authentic lives and giving that space to people is really like opening the chances to explore your own life and process it and things like that.
Thanks, Ash. Natalie?
Yeah, I think authenticity is a tricky one, mostly because it depends on the space you're in and whether you feel like you have the safety to do that. I know for like many artists, if they've got their community, they're feeling safe to explore that. But if you're an arts worker and you're wanting to bring that part of yourself to work, I think there's a real idea, I think, amongst some arts organizations that when a disabled person brings themselves authentically to work, that they're being unprofessional, or that they're being too personal and it's not appropriate for the workplace. And I think that that's a narrative that needs to change, because the more authentic you can be in yourself, the better you're going to show up to do your job, to create art, to do whatever it is that you're doing. And so I think that there needs to be a shift around maybe these different perspectives that seem less professional, massive air quotes, less professional doesn't mean that they have less value. If anything, they're being the most true and honest, and that's probably the best thing you're going to get for your project or whatever you're working on.
Yeah, I can attest to that people who bring their authentic selves do their best work at work. Raquel, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I love what all of you have said so far. I think you've touched on some really important points, such as the burden of education and what authenticity means in different contexts. I will add, I think that arriving to a place where we can express ourselves authentically as deaf/disabled artists is important, because it lays the foundation for future generations. The quote, "We stand on the shoulders of giants," I think rings true for me in this context. I owe my journey in becoming not only comfortable but proud of who I am, thanks to the generations before me who've established a culture of pride, celebration, resilience, and ferocity around the perception of disability, including within the arts circle.
Thanks, Raquel. You also mentioned changing the culture of the arts. What change do you want to see? Does anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in because this is my main point, and we joked about this when we were preparing for the panel, because I wrote the words hoity-toity, and I was like, that's my main thing that I would like less of in the art space. I think that, my use of the word hoity-toity here is just kind of saying that, there's a kind of pompousness and like, you have to be really prestigious and aim for that and aim to be rich and glorious and whatever as an artist. But maybe I just want to be a messy artist, like in my bedroom. Like maybe that's what I want to be. And I don't want to be hoity-toity and part of that society kind of idea of the grand artist or the master artist. And I think that especially for disabled folks, like like, what does it mean to be in a hoity-toity society that's not even accessible? Like, I don't want to be part of that. So I would love to see a culture of arts that really accepts all levels of creativity and expression and being an artist, whether that is, in a grand museum or in the corner of, your parents' bedroom where there's some space to do some painting or whatever you're doing as a kid. And maybe when you're growing up, like I was doing lots of art in the backyard and then it would just get rained on, and I really liked that art. And it probably wouldn't make it to a grand museum, but it was great art.
I like it. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think just on that point, like, immediately sent me back to being on like 50 pages of a Word doc as a kid, where I was like, I need to write this story. It's size 40 font. It's really important. And just playing with that idea that it doesn't need to be, oh, I'm so professional and hoity-toity, which is now a word that is going to be my vocabulary, and I'm going to be stimming about it all week. I think on that too, like, the culture that I want to change is I'm really sick of organizations saying we want more diverse audiences, but why aren't they coming to us? And it's like, why aren't you going to them? Like, instead of waiting all the time for like, we want more diverse audiences, why aren't they coming to our things? Like, well, you're not considering the barriers to access to that. You're waiting for them to tell you, which is an onus on disabled communities and a lot of different communities to have to do extra work to access a space when they're already not getting what they need from that space. So I think that many organizations in different areas as well just need to think of less of access as an afterthought and have it from the very beginning. And even those organizations that think that they are accessible, they need to think through it a bit more. Because like, there's different events that I know of that, you know, they're wanting more people to come along, and then someone was asking for Auslan interpreters, and it wasn't until 2 weeks out until those Auslan interpreters got booked, and there were barely any tickets left. And so I think a lot of places need to change their mindset around when access gets included in their event and whether someone has to ask for it before that's even considered.
Access first. Raquel, did you want to add anything?
I think I'll just be echoing some of the points that you've said so far. I stand in agreement. I think that a big part of changing the culture is rooted in shifting perceptions of what art should be and what it should look like. As you said, I think that art itself is so broad and vague that it can be scary for some people, myself included, so that it's easy to fall back on outdated perceptions of what it means. So things like, you know, art is only for the elite, art is only valuable if you share it with other people, not necessarily if it's a private practice that you do for your own personal reflection and growth. You're only a true artist if you make sales or whatnot. I think all of those hold back people from accessing what can be a really life-saving practice, a really mind-opening and heart-opening practice. So for those reasons, I think that those need to first and foremost change, and I think the disabled/deaf community has a beautiful ability to get the ball rolling with that.
Thanks. Michael?
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone has said. Of course, I feel like that goes without saying. I think one of the things that I have often thought about the art community is the amount of grinding that we all do on a daily basis, and it's just unrelenting. And I think that's something that needs to change, especially in regards to access. Yeah, I mean, I'm chronically ill, so there are times where I can't work or I can't be creating because I just don't have anything left to give. And I think being an artist in a space where the grind is expected, as soon as you're awake, you are making, and you are like building your audience or like creating work that can be sold or like putting yourself out there, and that's really, really tough. And I think that can only make art more, I just think it makes it worse, to be honest. Yeah, I would really like to be in a community where I don't have to be making something for somebody else all the time. Sometimes I just want to make something for myself. Sometimes I just want to, put my silly little characters and just, play around with them and make things just because I think it's cool or just because I want to, and I don't want to show it to anybody or sell it or anything just to have it. I think one of the things that has been really... I think it's helped me become a better creative is learning to make things to myself again, because there was definitely a time when I thought, if it's not for somebody else or it's not for sale or it's not for an audience, then why bother creating it at all, because it's not helping me further my practice in any way, so it's not worth it. But actually, I think it is worth it because it means that I get to experiment and have freedom to be making stuff that I think is cool, which has actually made me a better artist. And I think we should be letting artists do what they want instead of doing it for everybody else. Is something that I have been thinking about a lot, actually. There's one other thing that I was thinking about. I can't remember. I'm sure it'll come back to me at a really important time and I won't be able to say it. So, yeah. But for now, that's, yeah.
Thanks. This is our last question. How can people build on this manifesto? What tips would you give people who are dreaming about the future of the arts? Does anyone want to kick it off?
We've all got our thinking faces on. I'll kick us off. I think for the future of the arts, we need allies. And the allies don't have to be abled or hearing or neurotypical. There can be other disabled people who just aren't experiencing the same barriers that you're experiencing, or aren't just dealing with the same struggles you're experiencing. Like, you know, there's that quote that I almost get wrong. But it's like, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's about like economy, but let's pretend it's not. I think that, you know, if you lift someone up, you're lifting other people up too. And it's that cheerleader mindset again, that we need people to speak up for us in the rooms that we aren't in. And I found many rooms that I'm in that if you're the only person speaking up because you're the disabled person, it makes you realize how many people are not talking about this issue or talking about this experience if you're not in that room. And that's just one, you know, white privileged experience. There's so many more marginalized communities that aren't getting that same face-to-face time. And I think also to like build on this manifesto, speaking from like an autistic and chronically ill perspective as well, there's so much education coming out right now, and people are it's so wonderful that people are getting diagnosed and are getting more understanding. But I think also, speaking from a queer perspective as well, because I love a lens, I think the more that we have a connection to our past history and the generations that have come before us, the more that it won't feel like we're working through the same problems on our own, and instead that we can, you know, the same thing that Raquel said about standing on giants, like work together to come forward for the future and realize that the generations before us have history and ideas that can help us move forward, and perspective onto the new things that we're experiencing as a younger generation.
Thanks. Raquel, any tips?
I think, speaking from personal experience, one of the best things that I've ever done in my art journey is to challenge these perceptions I've always held about art. And I think the committee as a whole did a beautiful job of propelling that process forward. So don't be afraid to try new things, new mediums. Try approaching art in ways that you feel challenge your perceptions of what it should mean. So if you perhaps feel like you should only make art to share with other people or show other people, make it for yourself in private. If you feel art is only visual art or whatnot, try doing something that utilizes, you know, random objects or whatnot, things like that. That's how I think I would begin the process. Another one that I think is really important on a more global level rather than an individual level, because this is a lot for one individual to take on, and it does require the input of allies as well, I feel, and that is to shift how we approach art in the deaf disabled space to one that is cultivates more support, more creative spaces where people can gather, create art together, share ideas, network if they wish to, because all of these things are quite limited at the moment, I feel, though I feel with time we'll get better.
Thanks. Ash, you look ready.
I'm like, are we going down the line? Are we going up somewhere? Yeah, as with everything else, agree 100%. I think that there's just, so much that we can learn from other people and things that have happened and from each other, and fostering a community. I also think that, and this is one of those, as usual too, easier said than done, but I think we should be unafraid of doing things differently, definitely, but also like not agreeing with each other all the time. I think that like when you are in a marginalized group, you're almost forced to agree with each other so that there's power in numbers and like power in like a collective voice and things like that. But we're still all individual people, and I actually think that what's amazing about communities is that like really amazing communities are ones that can work through a lot of differences and a lot of disagreements and like not necessarily come to a full agreement. Like you can just disagree and like that's okay. And I think in an art space, in a disabled art space, in all of that, like we're allowed to have different perspectives on art. We're allowed to do things differently. We should be allowed to disagree, and like that can create better art and more interesting art, and more interesting spaces too. And so I think that when the manifesto gets released, I would love to see like people agree and not agree and want to build it differently or interpret it differently to how we as 10, 12 young people did. And I'm sure in the future there'll be different things happening in culture which will mean the manifesto needs to change, and so it should be allowed to change based on whatever is happening. So I think that that'd be really cool to see in the future, just like more acceptance and respect for each other's differing kinds of opinions and thoughts and lives, I guess.
Kind of a bit of an opposite point, although I do agree. I think also we need to, as a community, come together a little bit more. Obviously, have space to disagree, which is something that I think is also really important. But also, we need to stop fighting a little bit, because at one level, we're already fighting a greater common enemy, and we need to cooperate a little bit. And I think with the, especially with the manifesto, it speaks of community and togetherness and how we can be stronger as individuals, as a group. And I think that I had a point. Sorry, my brain is just out today. I think especially with how we can grow as a community is listening to each other, and I did talk about this a little bit before, but listening to other people's experiences, because they broaden our worldview. And I think at one level we need to not know when to stop talking, because that's not what I mean, but know when to bring other people that are different to you into your sphere so that you can learn and grow as a person. I think especially uniquely the disabled community is really intersectional, because anyone can be disabled, and that's something that not a lot of people realise and single disabled people out as a community, when actually disabled people come from all parts of the world and all experiences and all walks of life, and we can really learn from each other. So I would like to see, in relation to what we talked about in the manifesto, which will become available, ways that we can learn from each other and share our experiences, that we can create an even better manifesto later on when we have learned from each other more. Because while we were, as the advisory committee, we were a very nice group of people, if I do say so myself. But we are just one group of people, and I would like to hear from all kinds of people, because that can only make our plan and our collective, no pun intended, manifesto even better.
Thank you. How amazing are these young people? I feel like I'm going to need to go to the physio because I've been nodding so much. Please thank our panellists, Ash Ham, Natalie Williams, Raquel Fasano, and Michael Spargo Ryan. Now I think we have a time for a Q&A. Is that right? Thank you. Yes, great. But before we do that, no, not before we do that. That's what we'll do now. Does anyone have any questions? It can be a general one or to a specific panel member. Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hello, my name is Joe. I'm a deaf-blind person and I'm a printmaker. Yeah, true. So, and I'm also doing sculpture at the moment as well. So I want to thank all of you, all of our panelists, for sharing your short stories. Really enjoyed seeing your stories. I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I had no idea about AAV as an organisation. I didn't realise that AAV meant Arts Access Victoria. At that time, I didn't know. And I was just like, okay, going on with my life. What should I do? And then I began doing some art and some painting, and I became really engrossed in it. And also that kind of tactile and types of art. And I saw a lot of barriers as I was going through this journey. And I was really, really grateful for the support of my communication guides. And I applied for a grant, and I was trying to figure out what that actually meant. But I was like, okay, I had a lot of encouragement to apply for grants. Not pushy, but just encouragement to do it. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's do this application for the first time in my life. Went through that process. And then when I applied, I thought, oh, so I had a go at some lino cuttings. And found I really enjoyed that, and it's also a very tactile experience for me as a deaf-blind artist. And had an exhibition in South Melbourne at Gasworks, which was really great. Really enjoyed the experience. Went through this journey, continued doing this lino cuts more as a hobby though, a bit of a dream that I had to become. I didn't really have dreams about becoming a professional artist necessarily, but things just kind of happened. And I applied for another one, and then been doing a mentorship for some sculpting, so the last few years, and I've really loved that experience. So I want to just say huge thanks to AAV in particular, and all of the team, all of the people that are involved in that have been amazing in supporting me through my journey. And I've found some really amazing success through this. It's been really great keeping my mind nice and busy and stave off dementia, all those kind of things. It's fantastic.
Thanks, Joe. It's been wonderful working with you. Do you have a question at all for anyone? No, you're all good?
No, thanks for sharing your stories and what I'd said before. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Does anyone else have a question for our panel? I should have thought of some questions.
Hi, I'm V. Yeah, I guess I was just wondering what is next for the AAV, like Youth Advisory Committee thing, or what comes out of the manifesto, like, and maybe even also like what else did y'all do outside of the manifesto, out of curiosity?
I don't know who wants to take it. I don't know that we know the future of it at the moment. Maybe Artie can speak to that at some point, who is behind you, and you can have a great chat. But I know that there are some plans to keep involving youth within Arts Access Victoria. Over the process of us consulting on different projects, basically, for anyone who's not aware, we were meeting maybe once every 2 months or so, and just consulting on different projects that were coming up. So, you know, there was like Alter State, there was Snug Rock, like a music event, and just providing feedback on different policies or just different ways that people interacted with events that were coming up, and just provided different perspectives on what could be more accessible, or just how we could approach involving more artists who were either young or of any generation, really. Does anyone else want to speak to that?
Yeah. I think in terms of the manifesto, like the future of the manifesto, one, it has to get released first, and then once it's released, I think that it can really like help inform not just AAV, but like arts with young disabled people, young deaf and disabled people in general, and again, like what we were talking about, kind of like using it as a jumping point, a point to like chat about and have discussions and connect community and bring together people and things like that. The manifesto is broken down into a few different broader kind of areas that we think would be good to focus on. And I find that like it's kind of like a creative policy, I guess, but like it's broken down in that kind of way where like, you know, in like a financial area, like what would we like to see for disabled young people? On like a more personal note, what would we like to see in the workspace? What would we like to see? That kind of stuff. And it really came out of those discussions that we had really organically, I think, from just talking about events and things, but also just talking about our own experiences as artists, the things we're seeing with our friends and the people we're doing art with or art for. And then, yeah, having that documented somewhere. And I think there might be plans in terms of like creative interpretations of manifestos and what that looks like. So, yeah, when it's out and about, there'll be bits and pieces that probably come flying around.
I think also the manifesto acts as kind of an open-ended question, which I know is a little bit contradictory to it being creative policy, but I think it's both, because it's kind of our way of sharing what we think, but also, again, there are so many people, so it's also a little bit up for interpretation, which might also come through with some creative interpretations. I think I heard a little bit about that when we were talking about it, but TBD.
I particularly enjoy me and Michael's like shared and opposing thoughts that are coming out.
Thank you for your question.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Samsara. I was thinking about, I can't remember which one of you brought it up. I think 2 or 3 of you spoke about the when people are saying, why can't we get people into our space? And I was thinking of an experience I had recently where I was actually embraced and invited. I've got a fringe show and I had trouble getting a venue, and then I found one and they said, come, please come. And I was thinking about what a difference that made for me. And I was wondering if amongst other, you know, I know a lot of places they provide audio description or they do provide signing or whatever, and but it's sort of the after the ticket thing. As part of the discussions about what can be done to make places and experiences open, have you guys at all discussed sort of how marketing or other types of things where it's kind of like, yes, are you deaf and disabled, please come to us, like a more assertive, and maybe what sort of popped up in discussions in that respect? Sorry, badly worded, but hopefully you got it.
Totally fine. I'm just going to jump on this, and then I think Raquel might have some ideas as well. Yeah, I remember I've been having a few conversations with different people who were like, feels like we're secret agents sometimes in different organisations when we've got invisible illness or invisible disability. And we're like, spotted another person, great, let's work on this scheme together. But yeah, I think there's a few different people in organisations in pockets who are actively thinking, what can we do? And I know there's some people at an organisation I know who are actively going, all right, if we are wanting more of this community at our event, how can we get them there? And just simply putting, you know, the Auslan symbol to be like, this is a deaf-friendly event, just straight on any social post or anything like that. But I think also from my experience, those organizations really value that feedback. So if the person isn't in the room making that suggestion, I would tell anyone, feel free to email them, feel free to call them, feel free to get a friend or an ally to call them or contact them. Because I think the more that they hear that, the more they're going to hear that demand for it, and knowing that they need that visual or that like first thing saying this is accessible for this community, I think they would be more than open to it. At least I hope that they are.
That's a very interesting point. I've never pondered it too much. That being said, to answer that, I might touch on an experience where I had the opposite issue, where there was an event, particularly within the deaf community, that had quite limited tickets. And as we'd already know that arts events with adequate access are already quite limited. So when it came to the issue that there was this event that was quite in demand but had limited tickets, it turns out that quite a few people who weren't deaf ended up, a lot of tickets ended up selling out to a lot of those people, which left a lot of deaf people sort of disappointed that they had missed out. So even though it's the opposite issue, I think it points back to what you said of the beauty of taking a more, I guess, headhunting approach, reaching out to specific people that could potentially find value in that show or art event. I had experienced something similar recently. Someone reached out to me saying, we have this installation happening soon. We would love you to attend. It's Auslan interpreted. This is what's going to be involved and whatnot. And while I couldn't go, I still felt so touched that someone had thought of me specifically and wanted me to attend. And I think I would love to see more of that down the track.
I'll also just add that I think this was in the YAC, but maybe in some other conversations at AAV that happened like while the YAC was happening too. But we had a lot of conversations around like what it means to make something intentionally online versus intentionally in person, and like what it looks like to do that, and how obviously we have a lot of hybrid events. This is a hybrid event, but what does it feel like for it to be hybrid, for you to be online versus in person, and that a hybrid event is not the solution to making things accessible, and isn't, it's a very like kind of passive way of doing accessibility. And it's important, we should be doing things hybrid, but how can we make sure the experience for people in the two different places is not necessarily the same, but they're getting something out of it. So imagining, like, I think it was Snug Rock actually, we talked a bit about how if people are joining online, like how can they still get that social aspect, and it's going to have to look completely different to how people are socializing in person. So you might have to have a different moderator, a different style of socialization. It might have to be a bit more directive because it's harder to interact online in that like Zoom kind of space I think it was run on. And so I think that it's really good to actively reach out and get the people involved as the other panelists were talking about, and doing that, but also thinking about how your actual event is intentionally supporting that group of people that are using or coming to that event in that way. And I don't think like we came to any like grand conclusions, but just to think about things intentionally, and like why are we doing this, who are we doing it for, and how can we specifically cater to that rather than like shoehorn it into what we're used to doing. And those kinds of conversations came up quite a bit between us as a group.
Similarly to that, just reminded me actually, we did have those conversations in the YAC.
Good.
We should mention YAC is Youth Advisory Committee, but we just love saying YAC because it's so much more fun.
I remember while we were having those conversations, especially about the intentional hybrid events, especially with stuff like music and live music, which is something that I am very passionate about, and I love going to live music. But one of the things that often stops me from going is accessibility requirements, because it's just not really a thought at all, especially as someone who loves metal, which is a bit, there aren't that many events that are accessible because not that many people talk about it. So I would like to see more intentional access how do I word this? I would like to see events becoming more accessible intentionally, and actually factoring in the experience. Because so many of the gigs that I've gone to have been me sitting at the back of the room, not being able to see the stage. All my friends are in the pit, and it's just, why am I here even? So I think definitely creating events that are accessible intentionally is really important, especially as we talked about in the YAC. Yeah, especially as, like you said, because a lot of times when people are making accessible events, they feel like they're filling a criteria, which isn't the disabled experience, because we're actually people and we would like to enjoy events, please. So yeah, I think instead of thinking it as a, does this event technically suit these kinds of people and their access requirements, think about it more as like, how can we tailor part of this experience to people's access needs, as opposed to just thinking of it as a chore. Yeah, I think that's something that I would really like to see.
Thank you for your question.
And good luck with your fringe show.
Yeah. We need to wrap up soon, but if anyone has a burning question, we would be happy to accommodate you. Doesn't look like it. Thanks again so much to our wonderful panelists. I'd also like to give a shout out to Artie, who has been facilitating the Youth Advisory Committee the whole time, and also to CJ, who works on the youth program too. I'd also like to thank the Youth Advisory Committee funders, which include Creative Victoria and the Victorian Government and Creative Australia. Have I forgotten anyone? Vic Health. Thank you. We are going to take a break for about 10 minutes, and then you can join us in the room behind this lovely wall here, which is the response room, and we will be doing a workshop and also having a snack. You can have a snack in the break, not during the workshop, or both. I'm not sure if the catering is here in time. Anyway, so it will be a guided workshop. We will give you some provocations to dream about the future and add to the manifesto. Please give a hand again to our yaks.
Thank you.
Thank you.